Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being with us. I'm Freda, and of course, we've got Loredana, Padurean. I will introduce our guests in just a moment. A couple of housekeeping announcements before we begin, and I will go to the next slide. Just a reminder to mute your mics, okay? And do keep your camera off. And I think that's to help out with broadband and all the other challenges. And if you have any questions, you can do that in the chat box. So we've got 30 minutes. We know it might go on longer than usual, but let's try to keep this succinct. I'd like to introduce our first guest for today. Kay here is someone I interviewed a while back, and Kay is from this brand. You all would know this brand called, she's the head of brand for dressing Paula. But under that umbrella, you've got Nichi, you've got Kids Chen, and I don't know what else I have missed. So maybe, thanks for being with us and on this topic. But before we do that as well, I want to talk to Professor Loredana on why we decided to do this series.
I don't know. I don't know what we were thinking. It's not like we're not busy. A lot of people are talking about the fact that you're in lockdown and you're bored and you have nothing to do. I've been working harder in lockdown since I've been working before, and even before that I worked very hard. So the capacity, the human capacity, it's highly expendable. But the reality is that when Freda and I met for the first time a couple of years ago, dare I say, it was a little bit love at first sight. Yes. And it was a little bit of a, it almost felt like I met my mind soul, like my mind mate in that sense. And we had an instant chemistry, and we didn't really have to talk a lot to be on the same page. I was on your show, and then we started talking like we've been best friends forever. And then we met a couple of times, but it's not like we've been hanging out too long. Yeah. But Freda and I texted each other last week, just sort of like, hey, how are you? Tuesday, yes, yeah. Tuesday. And I said, hey, I just want to check on you. How you doing? I'm good. How you doing? And you said, we should do something together. I'm like, okay, let's do something together. What? Well, something that is not COVID related, but it's something that we both care very much about, which is, if you want, simply hard topics. And I have to tell you, for those of you who don't know us very well, I think we should compete from now on in Formula One of setting things up in the fastest, quickest way possible. So this was Tuesday. By Tuesday evening, we had a title, which is outspoken, because you look at the two of us, I think that's the first word that comes to your mind. Then we said, let's launch it as a mini series. Let's not just do one thing. And then let's tackle some of the subjects that both of us, together with many of our friends, face on a daily basis. And like I said, we don't want this to be a COVID-related talk show, if you want, but obviously we're going to touch upon the reality of living in a lockdown. So when we started talking, we came up initially with 4 topics, right? The first one was being bold. And I think because we did this in such a bold way, it was sort of the natural theme. But then another theme that both Freda and I have in common, and we talked a little bit about in our previous engagement, is feeling guilty, dealing with guilt, managing guilt, and maybe getting rid of guilt at some point. So that was another theme. And then another thing that we both have in common a lot is dealing with stereotypes. I know for a fact that I'm being stereotyped all the time. So is Freda. People look at me all the time and said, you're a professor, you don't look like a professor. Like, I don't know what a professor is gonna look like. And then our last one, in a way, was inspired also by this putting together this Mission Impossible. And in the last podcast, we're gonna talk about hustling. So how do you do things fast? How do you do things in a limited resource environment? So the reason why we do this is because we're both outspoken women. We have a bunch of outspoken friends. We all wanna talk about simply hard things. And we found the extraordinary Kay here, who's gonna help us go through this journey of talking about being bold.
Yes. All right, so Kay, I just want to ask you though, I know before we get started, what have you been up to?
Just like Loredana was saying, I've just been, working a lot. Same, I think a lot of people also feel like we're working a lot more now as compared to before. And, there are definitely days, and actually on a daily basis, I have to remind myself to that there is a cutoff point, because I think it's really easy to get burnt out, like working from home, I find. So yeah, I think this juggling of like, you know, having the office in your house and also taking some time off to step away from it, it's just been like a juggle for the past, you know, month.
Right. Okay. So it's day 30th, by the way, in case you're all
Oh,
wondering.
exactly.
Because we forgot what days, but it's day 30th.
Yeah.
You know what we're going to do right now? We're going to get straight into it. And we're going to address some of the questions and our viewpoints. We've got it on the screen right here. And we're going to go and ask, and of course, you know, do put any questions that you have as well later, right? But these are the questions to the audience that we've got, right? How do you avoid being seen as rude or arrogant when we are being bold or speak our mind? Okay, so I wanna address that first. Okay, people always assume boldness with brashness, right? Being bold doesn't mean being brash. When I think of that image of someone who's bold, you know, when I think of Mother Teresa, you know, I don't think she's brash, but she's very bold, right? So that is the one thing that is important. I know people who speak in very soft tones, but the words cut, right? And you don't look at them and think of them as that, oh, that loud, outspoken person. But that to me is also, you know, so it's that, I guess it's that image of when someone says you're bold, that they think of this Loredana and Freda. Not necessarily true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I actually think that's why you invited Kay to join us, because we had believe it or not, we actually prepared for this talk show. We had a 7-meeting chat 2 days ago. And I asked Kay to tell us a little bit about what are some of the things that make her bold. And Kay said, I actually don't think I'm bold. Why would you think of me as bold? And for me, sometimes humility and modesty and humbleness is actually a very strong signal of boldness. And you're right, you don't have to be as outspoken and as loud as Freda and I are, but I think, Kay, you're very bold. So can you tell us a little bit about what makes you bold? Or maybe
I mean, I think I think sometimes people think that you have to be, I guess, loud is one thing, or, you know, you constantly have to speak to get people to hear you. I think some people look at it as that, but I think for me, when I think about being bold, it's, you know, you have to, there's boldness in not speaking sometimes too, you know, in really assessing the risk, or, you know, hearing other people speak first and then have your turn is, I think, is a form of boldness, because you're not just saying something out of the saying something, you know. So for me, I think in my experience of what I considered as a bold move on my end, I think coming from a family business, and also the youngest family member in the business, one of the things that was difficult was communication. I think people didn't want to take me seriously because I am the youngest, and, you know, would easily be dismissed, not intentionally. I think it's just how we have been grown up, right? We have been brought up to always listen to your elderlies and not talk back, and not challenge our superiority, right? But I think since I was a kid, I've always been questioning, why do I have to follow? You get what I mean? If I didn't feel like it was right, or you couldn't answer me, why am I doing what I'm doing, or you're asking me to do, I would challenge that. So being unconventional has always definitely helped me in my career, past 11 to 12 years, and that has, you know, in terms of opinions, that has not been very popular in upper management or in the family business, but it has also served me really well. There are definitely failures being unconventional, but I think change only comes through action. So
right.
Yeah,
I think it's also because it is a family business, and in their eyes, you're still the youngest,
Yes.
Right. So
Yeah,
you've been
yes.
so your definition being bold is being unconventional. By the way, I'm wearing one of her dresses. You can't see
Yeah.
it. Okay. Loredana, you have anything to add to that?
Just paid advertising. I didn't get a dress from a. I didn't get a good
We'll send you a care package soon.
Oh, so, it's so interesting, Kay, that you talk about the being unconventional. So I don't know, for those of you who don't know me, on my social media, my tagline is unapologetically unconventional. And when I joined ASB 5 years ago as one of the first people to join the company, I helped shape the philosophy of ASB, defined by two attributes. One is unconventional and the other one is extraordinary. So in everything that you see in terms of advertising and marketing at ASB, we are defined by these two attributes. And I'm so happy to see so many of my students and my colleagues in the audience. We think of ourselves as unconventional. And the reason why I think of myself as unconventional, and I think also a lot of my friends, is when you have to do things in a very different way, because the reality is you can't really follow the same topics, follow the same frameworks, the same paths. Obviously, you're gonna stand out. For me, what makes somebody bold, with your permission, I want to talk about my great-grandmother. So I learned this recently. In my family, I am very unconventional, believe it or not. Not all of us are like this. And for a very long time, my mother would say, I don't know where you came from because you don't look like any of us. And I'd be like, I think I should be the one asking you this question. You should know better. So then at some point I had a relative who came to visit us, and she said, you know, you remind me a lot of your great grandmother, which I met. I mean, I knew of her. She died when I was maybe 19. And it turns out that my great grandmother in 1918, so imagine this is 100 years ago, got married. It was a sort of like a semi-arranged marriage to the richest man in the next town. Her family was the richest in that town. And after 2 years, she herself got a divorce because she didn't like the chemistry between herself and the husband. And she married her real sweetheart. And I thought, how amazing and how bold can somebody be 100 years ago in a small town in Transylvania, living in a very traditional environment, to get a divorce from a very powerful man, and then to do whatever she wanted. And I have to say that validated a lot of my own boldness, and I felt like, oh, at least I have a tribe that I belong to. But for me, like very similar to Kay's story is being bold for me is having the confidence to build your own path, even if the path is somehow off the beaten path.
Yeah. The road less traveled.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, and so I just want to link back to that question of culture as well, because you shared a little bit of that, Professor, and also Kay, you know, that the culture where what would be an effective strategy for a person who comes from a non-bold culture, and I suppose that's a very Asian thing, Chinese family, right? What can you do to adopt a little bit of spice of boldness in their character?
So, you know, what's really funny about that question is that a lot of family members, a lot of people in my family are actually really bold people. You know, they're very confident, they're outspoken. But I think, and in a lot of Asian families, we also have those kind of families where they're very, they're like, you know, a lot of them are very outspoken, but it doesn't mean that they're non-traditional. You know, they're still very traditional, even though they're so outspoken about things. So I think it's just like, yeah, culturally, maybe they've just been brought up to think a certain way, but still speaking loudly, you know. So I think for me, I've seen examples of, you know, how do you voice out your opinions by my family, but how do you be unconventional in a very traditional family, right? So like I said, I think action, right? I think really action in you know, even back in the days, obviously I had a lot of self-doubt because yes, I was taking in a lot of the opinions that I was, you know, still very young. I had a lot to learn, which is, I think at the time was accurate, but can be also very demeaning and then very unmotivational for a young person. So at a certain point, I had to tell myself, look, if I wanted something different, and if I feel there's something really instinctively inside me that needed to be changed, you have to make it happen. You just have to take that small action, however small they are, right? Whether it's in your personal life or, you know, in your family life or in your work life. So you have to make those action happens and see what happens. I think you kind of have to go, even if you want to do something, I think your first time is like, oh, how bad can it be if I do something different, and assess that, right? It means you assess the risk and so on. And if you feel that, look, at the end of the day, you're willing to take on those consequences, how bad can it be? And you, at the end of the day, you just learn from it. So yeah, I think how do you add a little spice is by taking action. I think that's the really important, the first move, and also to trust yourself. Yeah.
Taking action. I know, like, when it comes to culture, you know, I don't really fall into any particular area. I know I am Asian, I'm Chinese, and everything, but that doesn't really define me. When I talk about my parents, we're taught to honor our parents, right? And to do things that will not dishonor them, right?
Correct.
And that is across the board. I think biblically, right? Biblically, that's an important point. So, but I always ask myself also, when I do something, and I'm going to put a Chinese twist, am I affecting someone else's rice bowl? If I'm doing something, do I affect the consequences of my actions? Will it impact people negatively, right? If it does affect people negatively, then I won't do it, right? I mean, most immediate concern would be my mother, my son. If it doesn't, so, right? I mean, if what I'm doing doesn't affect your lifestyle, why should it matter? And I don't really care for other people's opinion, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, I want to add something to that. I'm not Asian. I don't know if it comes as a surprise, but a lot of people seem very surprised when I tell them that I'm from Bukit Tungku. But the reality, so I was born in Romania. I was born in Europe. I actually see a lot of Europeans here. I'm very excited to see that we have an international audience, people. We have an international audience.
Yeah.
But we actually have a very similar relationship with our elderlies and ancestors and family. And I have to say, in my case, I grew up with this obsessive phrase that I hate from the bottom of my existence, which is, how can you do that? What would people say? And I'm like, who are the people? You? My father? My brother? Yeah, maybe I'm going to care about what you guys say, but my neighbor, I mean, one of my neighbors is here, just so you know, but yeah, that neighbor I will care about because it's a friend. So I actually, once Kay was talking, I realized I had a thought. I started being bold when I started living my life for myself and not for others. And maybe this is a little bit generic, but let me tell you girls, when I realized that, my life flipped overnight. When I realized that actually, you know what? I honestly, profoundly do not care about what you think of me unless you're a very loved one. So like, I'm not gonna hurt somebody that I love, but you know what? My biggest role model in life is RuPaul.
I love RuPaul. Yeah, again.
He's so good. Yeah.
With RuPaul, you know, that's sort of like the
yes.
And RuPaul, you know, thank you. RuPaul says, if don't pay your bills, don't pay no attention, right? I know that we're on a webinar, but you know, I don't want to use bad words. But says, if beep don't pay your bills, don't pay no attention. So that was sort of my philosophy. Like, okay, I'm sorry, I'm going to offend you. It's not my intention. You are in my space. Feel free to remove yourself from my space. I am going to be very nice to my family. The second that happened, the second I realized that I'm living my life for me and not for anybody else, I actually became nicer to my family too, which was very interesting. By the way, for everybody in the audience, I have a single, very handsome brother that I'm trying to marry off. Because if he gets married, I don't have to get married. So this just so you know, if your interest, Freda, is to get dresses from dressing Paula, my interest is to marry my brother off.
This is also a match.com, guys. We're matching people up. Feel free.
You know what you said though, Loredana? It's about being authentic, right?
Yeah.
Are you really living your authentic life? If you, and if you're not authentic, it's a very difficult life to live. If you can't be who you are, it's just a very difficult place to be.
I think, can I just add, like, obviously, even among us three, I am the youngest.
No.
I mean, I would just like to add, like, I'm not sure about where you guys are at right now. I mean, for me, I'm sort of, an early stage of my life where I'm still trying to learn how to be authentic. I think sometimes a lot of people look at authenticity as like a destination, like, oh, I have to be here. But I think it's also a journey. I think everyone, day in, day out, you learn a little bit more about yourself. And then you go from there, right?
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. It is actually a journey. Like I said, actually one of the questions that the three of us went back and forth is, how do you become bold? And there was somebody who was asking us this when we were setting up, and I think you're right. It's a journey, but I think at some point in the journey, you have to ask yourself, what matters most to me? And based on that, you're going to decide. There's an interesting question here, ladies. Is there a limit for boldness to become too much? How can we reclaim boldness as our own in times of uncertainty? A deep question. I'm going to let you.
It's a really good question.
It's a very difficult question. So, Kay, since you're the youngest one, why don't you start?
This is an answer last then.
This is a really, I think this is a really difficult question, and a really good question, I think. Is there a limit to boldness? I think, what is your definition of boldness? I think everyone, it sounds to me, the question sounds like, oh, is there a limit to being too brash? Or like, what was Freda was saying. But I think there is no limitation in boldness. Because especially in times of uncertainty, boldness is what is needed.
Yeah. Survival tool.
Right? Because it's survival, and you need boldness to really assess all your risk and reassessing them again, and see if this is the right move, and what the risk that you're taking, how far can it bring you, or does it bring you anything if you do it? So I think in times of uncertainty, boldness is even more needed than usual. Yeah.
We have a very fun comment from Professor Charles Stein. Guess what? My boss is on the line, so please try to behave and make me look good. Charlie says, to boldly go where no one has gone before, which is my favorite show on the planet, Star Trek. But he's right. If you think about it, the most disruptive things in our life did not happen because somebody was a lazy couch potato thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to do it from here, right? I actually think a lot of disruptive innovations will happen from couches now because we are in lockdown. You have to be, I think, is there a limit to boldness? When Freda and I talked a little bit about what makes us bold, and she asked me if I'm bold, I said, I actually think I passed the bold stage. I think I'm reckless. So you probably might have to be a little bit aware of what is the level of boldness and where it turns into something else. But I think if you have a very, very strong goal and objective and dream and passion, I agree with you, Kay. I don't think there's a limit to that boldness. You just have to realize that at some point that might transform into something that you're not going to be able to control, or it might take over.
So now when you talk about reclaiming boldness, I want to connect that boldness to braveness. Being brave. And I think like when this has happened, a lot of us felt we were this whole lockdown, we felt we lost control, right? We felt we lost control. I can't go running, I can't go hiking, right? And I actually spent some time being miserable about that. I said, okay, I'm miserable, let me just spend some time being miserable about this. And then after that, okay, what is within my control, right? Area beyond control, area within control. What can I do? So I said, okay, let me do things that I was gonna procrastinate anyway. So I said, let me write. I was gonna write my next book anyway. Every day I'm gonna write 1,000 words. then that was within my control. And, so I've done over 24,000 words now, right?
Wow.
Right? So it's just 1,000 words a day. And then it just gave me the confidence and gave me, okay, I can't wait I hope the MCO is extended, it's almost to that point, right?
It's small wins, right?
Right. But it's just like, okay, then that confidence came back, that boldness came back, and I know that there are things that are within my control, and it's any small step that you can take that can give you back control with your destiny. And I think that is that's what people can do.
Yeah, setting up these small wins, right? It's celebrating small wins. Like you said, 1,000 words a day. When you completed that, that's a win. Like, I did 1,000 words, right? And that's such a great feeling as well, because you set a goal and you met it, however small it is. Yeah.
Right. And no TV until I finish 1,000 words.
Oh my God, Freda, I'm looking at the post. I need a ghostwriter for my book because I don't have the patience to sit down and write 1,000 words a day, but I can talk 1,000 words a minute.
Okay.
I actually think that instead of writing my book, I'm gonna speak my book. That might be something. That's a good idea. So I just want to warn everybody that we have 4 minutes and we barely covered half of the questions that we had from the audience, let alone the questions that we had ourselves. So at this point, I want to ask the audience if they have a very specific question that they want to ask us. And I feel like the three of us can talk until the end of time. All right, Jenny is asking us, some bosses cannot accept boldness. How do you express and communicate your opinion to your boss or colleagues to get them to be supportive of what you want to do in your work? Because you know confidently that that's the right thing, the small wins to advance your career. So this is a question from Jenny Lim. Hi, Jenny. Thank you for asking us.
Hi, Jenny.
So who's going to answer it?
Some bosses cannot accept. So my boss is here. You answer it.
Okay, wait, Kay, you've got employees, and I'll tell you how would you answer that? I've got my answer as well, but you first.
You're the guest. Kay. Why don't you answer first?
Again, okay. I think, for me, obviously there are people in my team who are not as outspoken as I am. But a lot of times, I always emphasize that, you need to tell me what you need from me, because me, as a senior standpoint, I'm here to make your life easier, right? That's my role. So if at any point they don't tell me why they're not completing or they're not performing as they should, then it doesn't help me and doesn't help them. It doesn't help them achieve what they need to achieve. So, I still have a boss, right? I still have a group CEO that I need to report to. I think what has really helped me is you need to know your facts. You really need to do your homework, right? You need to showcase that. And because that's something that you can control, right? If you feel so strongly about something, it has to be shown in data or some study. You need to know your facts, because your boss is going to have a ton of questions for you, and if you can't answer them, then you're not confident in your idea. So if you're not confident in your idea, how is your boss going to see? And that translates, right? Because you're right in front of them. They can tell if you're being nervous and being not knowing your answers is two different things, right? Yeah. Your boss can maybe think that, okay, maybe you're just nervous, but you actually know your answer. Take your time. But that's why I say, like, really do your homework, know your facts inside and out, and present them. And that has really worked well for me. And sometimes it takes time. I wouldn't say, oh, the first time you present them, that they will say, oh, yes, immediately, I totally get what you mean, go do it. A lot of times, I think, for me, I'm dealing with a slightly older generation, so they have their ways. Not to say that their ways is wrong. They have, they got to where they are by doing something right? Mm. So maybe sometimes it takes a little bit more convincing. So you just need to carve out time to convince them over and over again, and why your conviction is so strong, right? And I think over time, when they understand you better, they have a higher chance of understanding you better and saying yes to it, right?
Yeah.
So I would say be patient, but also be bold, right? Like, and know your facts. If you're confident in your own facts, yeah, that's my advice.
We have another question. Do you think boldness, when expressed by different genders, judged differently? Is a woman that is bold different than a man is bold? What are your personal experiences with that? Well, I don't think any of us have any experience with that. We've been equally treated our entire life, and none of us have ever been called the B word for being a little bit more outspoken than the guy next door.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay, of course, yes, definitely. Stay tuned for episode 3. We're gonna talk about that. But
yeah.
Yes, that is the reality. It doesn't have to be the case, right? But that is the reality, is being perceived in that way. But do we have to change who we are? I don't think so, right? If you've got your facts, if you've got your information, like Kay was saying, just do that, right? And yeah, we have personal experiences. Again, if you're not an empty vessel makes the most noise, but you stand by what you believe and you've got facts to support it, so be it, right? Who cares how people think? We're going to be judged anyway.
Exactly.
We're going to be judged whether we're a man or a woman. We're going to be judged anyway, right? So don't even put gender in the picture. We've got to change that storyline. We've got to change that belief, right? So the gender out of the picture, just know what your stuff is all about. And I just want to add a little bit to the earlier question, just a little bit to Jenny's point, right? Also take a time to read your boss, right? What sort of person is your boss? Maybe they need the information visually. Maybe they need information through, an Excel spreadsheet, right? So if you know that they're of a different kind of ways of receiving information, try to craft your information in the way that's best consumed by the person. So get to know your boss, what kind of person they are, how they like to receive information, because there's a whole study around that, whether the person's visual, audio, and that kind of thing. Topic for another day. But so understand your boss as well. Your style of communication and the way the person receives it could be very different. So understand that it's different kinds of people. No one's right, no one's wrong. Just different maps of the world.
Correct.
You as an employee, then how do I get to your map?
Yes. What's really funny is that some of the seniors that I have to deal with, some have a very short attention span. That means, I have to craft my pitches to them within like a 5-minute frame, or the 10 at the maximum. Anything after that, obviously they're busy, they've got tons of things happening. So anything after 10 minutes, they either lose interest or they have to rush off to somewhere, right? So like you said, getting to know your boss and how to best grab their attention. What is the peak attention time, right? Like different times of day. Sometimes I feel like, I think, mornings probably don't work well. Maybe, late evenings work better, or some people maybe work better in the mornings, right? So yeah.
I like that. Feng Shui.
Jenny, Feng Shui and good timing. So I wanna add a little bit to both questions. So I couldn't agree more with Jenny. I think knowing your facts, not going and just being brash. So there's a difference between being brash and being bold. One of the things that I've been trying to help my colleagues who work with me is to tell them, don't get intimidated by me. I know that I come across very strongly, but all I care about is a good argument. If you have a good argument, you're gonna win every battle with me. So, but I also don't want people to sort of shy away from expressing what they want just because they feel like they are not bold enough. And then to the second point about the stereotypes about gender, which we're gonna talk on episode 3. See, it's such a good thing we have a series because now we can talk more things. I was always aware of this, but I chose not to allow it to define my narrative. So it's fine. If you think like we're going to talk again on episode 3 about stereotypes, if you think that I should not talk like this, I should not act like this, I should not dress like this, like RuPaul says, unless you pay my bills, that ain't my problem. One of our European viewers says the stereotypes extend to different cultures, not just gender. It's very interesting that you are offering these perspectives in regard. Thank you. Oh, we got our first positive feedback. Oh my goodness.
Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for waking up with us. We're 5 minutes past the time. Should we look at maybe one more question? I feel
Just like one more question, yeah.
Right, so we actually asked, how do you put the past behind you? We actually talked a little bit about it. What does boldness mean to you and what you have achieved? I think we covered that. Does the definition of boldness remains the same over time? Maybe this would be a good wrapping up question.
Yeah, I think this one, like what I mentioned also earlier in the session where I said some, you know, boldness can be, keeping quiet is also a sign of boldness. So because, you know, you, like I said, assessing the risk and assessing the room, when do you apply your boldness is also very, it's something that people who are bold, they do. Something that they do is, it's not just like, oh, I want to speak, therefore I speak now. You know, it's important to also listen to what other people have to say, whether you agree or disagree. Yeah, I think.
In my case, what I learned is that I know how to manage better my own boldness. So I think when I was slightly younger, because Kay, we are not really that old. I don't know what you think that Freda and I are.
I didn't say that you guys are that old. I'm just saying I am the youngest.
I don't know how you know that. I didn't show you my passport. Did I show you my passport? No, I didn't show you my passport. I just show you my wrinkles. Anyway, what I realized in time is that what changed with me, in my case, is knowing how to manage my own boldness. Like you said, knowing when to shut up, which I still don't. But at least I'm aware of the fact that I should be shutting up right now. And somehow my mouth is still talking. My brain is saying, shut up, shut up. But I also think is boldness changes in time with your experience of how do you either fear things or not fear things. How to engage with people or not engage with people. I remember when I was in college, I was extremely combative with people who are sort of like breaking the social rules or norms, and I would very easily get into fights with everybody. I remember almost beating up a guy for taking a turtle from a turtle pond and playing with it, and the guy was like twice my size, and I was like, oh. And you know, maybe today I wouldn't do that. Maybe today I would just take a picture and shame him on Twitter. But it evolves in time. How do you feel about
passive aggressive? You know, that's what you.
I'm never passive. There's
No,
nothing.
she's never passive.
Actually, there's nothing passive about her.
No, there's nothing passive. Freda, any comments?
Okay, just parting words before we go. To me, it's always, someone once told me, do you want to be rich or do you want to be right? Sometimes, right, you can win that war because, you know, I see the game, right? If you want to feel right about things, go ahead, right? So sometimes and I pick my battles. Is it worth it? Sometimes it's just not worth it. You're just not worth my energy, right? So, and so I just, whatever, right? Because nothing I'm going to say is going to change your mind. So I just pick my battles. Is it worth the fight? Sometimes it's not, right? So if you feel it's going to make you feel happy to be right, it's fine. You know, I rather be rich in that process. You know, yeah. We're gonna close off now. I want to talk about the next one that we're gonna be talking to. So the next one we're gonna touch on guilt, right? And we've got Jen Lowe from Wanderlust & Co. And the reason why she's so gorgeous. The reason we've invited her is because I was having a chat with her just a few days ago as well. It's just like, you know, I just feel I'm caught in this place where I'm really grateful with what I have, but at the same time, I feel guilty that at the same time, but I also I'm okay, but I feel guilty that I'm okay. And it's like, wow, you know, this is such an issue that a lot of people face. And I think women, you know, generally always feel guilty about something. So anyway, she's going to be joining us for our next episode next Friday.
Yeah. And then after that, we're going to talk about typecasts, which we talked a little bit about. And then episode 4 is going to be a theme on hustle. And actually, Kate told us today, why only 4 episodes? So for everybody in the audience, we actually want to have more than 4 episodes, but we couldn't find a sponsor to pay for this call. So, but if you like it, please share it. We're going to send everybody the link. You can actually share this this recording with your friends. Whoever you think that needs a little bit of sprinkle of boldness, you know where to find us. And we will see you on April 24th at 3 p.m. We will share this episode with everybody. I know I got a lot of messages, by the way, I didn't tell you ladies, of people saying that they're in a meeting or they cannot make it, but they want the recording of this. So it looks like we're going to have our tiny little audience of this outspoken talk show host.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for joining us.